Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast, where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever. Hello and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective. And with me today, my usual co-host is not here. However, we have a very special guest. Our other practitioner, Brendon, is here today, and super excited to have Brendon here, chat with her, have you learn more about her, and excited to dive into a lot of her background and a lot of her certifications around trauma healing, nervous system regulation, and I think you guys will get a lot out of this here. So Brendon, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, super excited to have you on. So just for people who, if they don't know you, Brendon has been with our practice now for most of this year, right?
Mm-hmm. Since last December.
Yeah, perfect. So it'll be almost a year here very shortly, which is super exciting. So Brendon, let's just dive in here and start with just kind of your background, like where'd you come from? How'd you get into the holistic health space? Like all that kind of stuff.
My background really is in a totally different field. I went the traditional route of, high school, college, like corporate job. But I always knew something was just a little bit off. Like it wasn't my passion doing what I was doing in the corporate world, and I was never happy. I ended up with a bunch of health issues and ended up gaining a ton of weight. And that's really kind of where this journey started, was just trying to lose weight. Because I don't think I consciously realized this at the time, but I thought that if I lost the weight, then my whole life would change and everything would be great. So I, did the whole diet and exercise thing, and it worked. I lost a bunch of weight. But as I'm sure you know, like it doesn't change your whole life. You're still the same person. Your body is just different. I did have more confidence, and I learned how to like nourish my body well, which all of those were really good things and valuable. But there was just couple of huge pieces missing for me still that I didn't discover until way later. So I just kept on going and thinking, well, I'm not doing this right. I'm not doing it well enough. Just all these kind of shaming, devaluing kind of thoughts. So I just kept looking for answers. I ended up going to yoga teacher training because I had started rock climbing, and like the gym had yoga, and I got very into that. And one of the concepts that really stuck out in teacher training was the idea of samskaras, which are basically like pathways in the brain that hold all of your programming. Mm-hmm. And so your samskaras will show up in your yoga practice just by the way you show up to the mat and you do the poses. And like, are you fidgety the whole time? Are you able to like focus? All those kind of things. So that got me thinking a lot more about like what's stuck in my brain and is showing up in my body. And then I came across the book Biology of Belief, which for anybody out there who hasn't read it, it's such a great book all about epigenetics. So I realized that like environment changes your genes, but also your perception of your environment and yourself will change your health, change your genes. And that was a huge aha moment for me, because I had done a lot of change just like in my physical environment, controlling my food, cleaning up my products, all of that. And it did make a difference. But my overall perception of those things was a little bit distorted. Like, I guess you could call it orthorexia. I was kind of going down that route. And the unhealthy foods just became things I was afraid of. So that's not healthy, No. You don't want to be walking around in a fear state all the time and feeling like you have to be 100% perfect in order to get healthy or stay healthy.
No.
So in the back of that book, Bruce Lipton lists a lot of resources of energy psychology modalities. And one of those I really latched onto. I don't know why. I think it was just presented into my awareness in some other ways. And so I ended up going to a workshop for Psych-K, and that totally changed my life. I mean, people say game changer all the time, and I find it a little annoying, but like, this is what I would consider a game changer for me. And that just got me started down the path. And because I always like to learn new things and read stuff all the time, I just kept learning and coming across different modalities that have been great for different aspects of my life and my health journey. And that really came in handy in 2022 when I developed some really severe symptoms and was diagnosed with reactivated Epstein-Barr virus. By that point, my diet was so good. I was doing all the self-care things, everything that you're supposed to do. And I added in some supplements to deal with the virus. And literally nothing helped until I really went so much deeper into all these modalities that I had learned and worked on my nervous system, cleared out a bunch of trauma, integrated a bunch of things. And that's actually when I was able to heal. So all of this stuff really has changed my life, and I just love it. It's fascinating to me.
That's amazing. Thank you much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think so many people will relate to if I lose the weight, everything will change. I'll feel so much better. It's just a weight thing. And I think this is so perpetuated by Western medicine of, eat less, move more, lose the weight. That's the answer to chronic health issues. And we know, yes, weight loss in certain instances can be valuable and helpful. And that is not the be all end all. It is often not the solution or one of the solutions that is really going to change our lives, change our perceptions, make such a massive difference if we are dealing with chronic health issues. So, I think that so many people get into this because of that, which especially women, perpetuated by, images of what we're supposed to look like or supposed to show up as, or, all that kind of good stuff. So and we'll link the Biology of Belief, that book in the show notes here. So if you guys are interested in reading that, we'll link that in the show notes here so that you have it. So let's dive into these because I'm familiar with a lot of them, but I've never done a deep dive into a lot of these here. So I'm super excited to do this today. This is me geeking out probably as much as a lot of you guys listening. So, selfishly, I also wanted Brendon on to learn even more about these too. So Psych-K was kind of the thing that initiated a lot of this. So what is Psych-K? What do you do? What is it? Tell us all the things.
Psych-K, they call it a spiritual process with psychological benefits. So it is, you can view it more on the spiritual side, which I do just because that's kind of my viewpoint, but you don't have to. It still works, even if you don't believe in all of that. But really, it's a set of processes that brings you into a whole brain state around whatever issue you're dealing with or around an affirmation statement. Basically, you can almost directly insert that into your brain like you're just installing a new updated program into your computer. So that's kind of how it works. And when I say whole brain state, that just means bringing the left hemisphere of your brain and the right hemisphere on board and allowing them to communicate together, because left hemisphere is more logical and critical and less emotional. Right side is almost entirely emotional. It's very abstract and creative. So you really want to be viewing situations in your life with all of those resources so that you're not defaulting too much to the emotional side, or you're not too disconnected and not feeling things. So it just helps you bridge that gap and bring it all together.
That's amazing. So who would this be really beneficial for outside of everyone?
I mean, everyone. Because this one is it can be a little bit more on the spiritual side, and there are certain processes that they're kind of inviting you to actually feel energy in your body and just trust that things are going to happen. So I find that people who are very, very logical and analytical can sometimes struggle with this one. So that would be, I guess, people who are on board with all the woo-woo, all the spiritual stuff, totally great for them. And you can work with pretty much any issue using Psych-K.
Now, so we can work with any issue. Do we need to have the issue kind of present? Can we, I know sometimes for me, sometimes I can feel like something is off and I can't quite pinpoint it yet. Can it help us pinpoint it too?
Um, you wouldn't necessarily, I mean, one great thing about Psych-K is it doesn't require you to necessarily know exactly what's going on. So if you're feeling a little uneasy or unsettled about something, you can just tune into those feelings in your body and we can work just with that.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And, if someone wants to do like a Psych-K session, like what, can you do this virtually? How long does this usually take? Like, is it a one session kind of thing? Like, what does that process look like?
You can do it virtually. It works very well. If you were to do a session with me virtually, I would just get connected with your energy field, which that's another thing that some people have a hard time understanding sometimes. But, we are literally all connected through energy and frequency. So it just makes sense that through intention, we can connect with each other. And then I do muscle testing on the client's behalf to that helps us know what the subconscious currently believes about the situation and where we need to go to change that. A session can last anywhere from really 10 minutes to an hour and a half based on what's happening. I've seen people have results with one balance process and just like not need anything else. And other people, it's really helpful to have several sessions, especially if there are many things in your life that you want to work on.
Yeah, that's amazing. And if you guys don't quite understand the energy piece, we did talk a lot about this in our energy healing episode of the podcast. So feel free to go back and listen to that one because we do dive a little bit deeper into energy is everywhere. We don't need to be in the same physical space to connect with energies. Energy doesn't know time and space and, all that kind of stuff. So feel free to hop back into that one. So you mentioned muscle testing. Let's chat a little bit more about this. What, for anyone who's not familiar, what is muscle testing? How does it work? And why does it work?
Great question. So muscle testing is really just a way of communicating with your body and your subconscious mind to know what's causing your body stress and what it's fully aligned with. So, there are many methods of muscle testing. One of the main ones you'll see for self-testing out there is the sway test. So just standing, feet shoulder width apart, so you're nice and stable, and then just saying a statement that you wonder, like, do I actually believe this? Or you could do this with supplements. You could pick that up and hold it, and whether you sway forward or backward, that lets you know my body wants this, yes, or this is causing me more stress, so no. So that's kind of the basics. Like I use testing with my fingers. So I'll just like make a little loop with my fingers and either like try to pull a finger through or it stays. If it's strong, that means that your body is in alignment with whatever it is you're testing. So you would just, it stays. If you say something that is causing your body stress, it kind of disrupts the chemical flow, or not the chemical, the electromagnetic flow of your body. And so you just can't hold that. No matter how hard you press together your fingers, you just can't hold it. So that's kind of the basis of muscle testing. I find it really useful for many things.
Yeah, and if you've never done muscle testing, it really is fascinating. One of the very first practitioners that I worked with in the holistic health space did muscle testing. And I was not on board with anything at that point. In the outside of like logic kind of thing, I had just come from all Western medicine. And I was just amazed at the way that this practitioner did it is, and I saw this person in person, they'd like put a supplement on my belly, my arm would be raised, and if they could push on it and I didn't move, it was a I'm good. If my arm, didn't move as they were pushing on it, and you have no control over it. It's really fascinating. As hard as you want to not move, you have no choice. And just super, super fascinating and so cool that we can do this virtually and do this not only with like supplements, but, with statements and questions and, where is the disruption in the body and all that kind of stuff. So that's super cool.
One thing, since you said questions, you actually don't ever want to ask a question and expect a great muscle testing response. You have to say it as a statement. So if you're wondering about something, you just like state it, and then your body will give you a yes or no answer. So anything that you can get yes or no to, that's what you can test.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. Because yeah, I'm not a muscle tester. I'm not trained in muscle testing, and so that is a very good clarification. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that, because that's a really really important point here. So awesome. Okay, so that's Psych-K, and Psych-K is mostly done one-on-one. Is that usually
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always done one-on-one, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Awesome. So let's talk about EFT or tapping
Okay.
next. So what is this?
EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and I left this part out of my story, but I actually discovered this in Reiki first. It's just that for some reason, I guess I wasn't fully ready for it. They didn't really stick as part of my normal life of things that I was using all the time. But I've been aware of and like using EFT sporadically for a really long time. But just in the last few years, I've gone a lot deeper into it because EFT is great in the moment whenever you're experiencing something really difficult and it's just hard to feel all the things. So it can help calm down that response. And that's what a lot of people know it for. But you can use it in a much, much deeper way to make more lasting changes. And I think that's the part that kind of gets missed sometimes because people are just like, they'll tap until they get rid of the emotion. They stop crying, they stop feeling angry, whatever it is. But if you go beyond that, you can then replace whatever those difficult emotions were with something positive and supportive that you want to see going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction, because this is my issue with tapping, is that most people use it just for an in the moment thing. And I think sometimes, and a lot of people don't understand that if you don't continue it and you are just using it in the moment, you're not actually changing the subconscious programming. And while it can be a very, very valuable tool, especially in the moment, if you have a lot of anxiety and you're dealing with a lot, like super valuable tool. And the way most people do it, it's not touching the subconscious and reprogramming that. So it's not always, when done this way, the best for trauma healing, nervous system regulation, long-term nervous system regulation, brain retraining, brain rewiring, although it can be if done for that specific purpose.
Right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
there are so many ways to go deeper with EFT. There's another, I guess it's a little bit of a spin-off, but it uses EFT called matrix re-imprinting. That's really working with inner child stuff that definitely will help reprogram the subconscious. And you just do it through the same tapping process with a little bit different visualization and a slightly different process.
Yeah, that's amazing. So with the tapping, what does that kind of look like? What does that process, yeah, what does that process really look like?
So you're tapping on acupressure points, and the points that were chosen are like some of the major points in the body that represent different organ systems, and it just helps your body to neutralize or get okay with whatever stressful situation that you're in. So if you're thinking about or experiencing something negative, by tapping on these points, it's helping you to come to a whole brain state, like we talked about, same thing here, so that you're not totally in that right side of the brain feeling all the emotions and it being too hard to deal with. Do you want me to go through the actual process of it, or?
I would love that.
Okay.
Yes.
There's so many videos out there about this already, but basically you start with the outside edge of your hand, like pinky edge. They call that the karate chop point, and you're just tapping that a little bit, and you say a setup statement. So it would be like, even though I feel really anxious right now, I love, accept, and forgive myself. And you say that 3 times while you're tapping. And then you move on to the first point. You'll find different people start with different points. It all works, doesn't matter too much. But I always start with inner eyebrow point. You can do one side or both, doesn't really matter, it all works. So you just start tapping and say something like, I feel so anxious right now. And then you move to the outer edge of your eye, kind of on the bone around your eyeball. And just continue saying whatever it is, and like make sure you're feeling it in your body too. So yeah, it really sucks to feel this anxious. And then you go below the eye, still on that bone there, and can just continue with whatever is going through your mind. Like, why do I always feel this way? You can just literally, it's best to say exactly what is on your mind. Don't hold back out of fear of, like, oh, I shouldn't say that. It's going to manifest something bad or whatever. We're trying to neutralize all of that right now. So it really is best to just say everything. So after under the eyeball, it's it's underneath the nose. And as you're tapping, you're still just saying whatever's on your mind. And then you move to your chin, just below the collarbones. And then underneath the armpit, it's about 1 hand distance down from your armpit. And then last one is crown of the head. So you go through that a couple of times. Usually you'll notice that you yawn or you take a deep breath, or there's some kind of easing or relaxing that you notice in the body. And that kind of lets you know, my nervous system has kind of downregulated at this point.
Yeah, and that's amazing.
Sometimes there'll be a point too where you'll notice all those negative things you were thinking, they start to not be so negative anymore. And so that's when it's actually really beneficial to keep on going. Like, start saying the neutral things, or even if you're fighting with yourself in your head, like, why do I always feel this anxious? Oh, well, yesterday this happened and I didn't feel anxious. Oh, but it's coming back now. Why is that the case? And you just like go through that process with yourself, keep going until, you feel good and you've put in some positive things. Like, I can handle this. I'm okay. I'm safe right now.
Yeah, that's great. And so you can go through that as many times as yes. you kind of need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. And when you keep going, when you start to calm down, that's when you can really start to tap into that subconscious and start to retrain some of those default programs that we're kind of running.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, tapping was actually one of the first things that I was introduced with. I worked with a trauma therapist who had several modalities that she worked with, and tapping was one of them. And I'm trying to, I honestly forgot that her and I did this until just now as you're going through it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I do kind of remember that. But we used it in a very different way, where she gave me statements to say as we were going through it. And I was not in a heightened state at the time. It was just, I think it was to touch the subconscious and to start to reprogram that, or maybe start to open me up a little bit. It didn't work very well for me at the time. I think that was a me thing, not a her thing. Because we also tried hypnotherapy, and that didn't work great either. But I also don't think I was ready for it at that time. I just don't think I could drop in enough to do that. And so hypnotherapy is another thing that you do, correct?
Right, yes.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit.
So both of those, hypnotherapy and EFT, I find that they're a lot better whenever you're using the other person's words. Like, how would you, Megan, talk about the issue instead of me just giving you statements about what I think, how you should view it, or what are positive, like supportive statements for you. Like, I don't know your life, so if it's something you can connect with, that's going to be most effective.
That makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah. And hypnotherapy, that is how I work with hypnotherapy. Like, I'll talk to the client first and just get a picture of really what they want their life to look like. Because most of us, especially people with chronic illness or who are dealing with, really difficult things, we focus so much on the negative. And that's just part of our survival brain that has helped us for thousands of years, to make it this far. So that's normal and natural. But we want to start focusing on the future and how you want your life to look once you are healed. What are you doing then? What does life look like? Maybe you're sitting at Thanksgiving dinner and actually able to eat all the food on the table instead of being so limited. So really tapping into things like that and tuning into your senses. So visual, of course, but also like smell, sight, sound, all those kinds of things. We can create a really vivid image of where you're headed and then put you into like a trance state. And just by me saying that and painting that picture for you, it helps your body to feel like it's more real.
Yeah,
And with hypnotherapy, the repetition can be really helpful because not everybody gets it on the first time. And the subconscious does learn through repetition. So it's just really helpful to have like a recording. And you can make your own recordings of things like this too and just listen to them daily or however often.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because I think that's really important. I think sometimes people think that, they do these things, once or for a couple weeks and then, everything's going to change, everything's going to shift. And I think you and I know a lot better is that, especially with things that have been, these default programs that we've been running for years, decades, for most of our lives, it takes some time to really change those, and they can shift. And I always talk about like layers, and then I always think of the movie Shrek of just like the onion and the layers. But really, I think it's a pretty good analogy, and this is how I feel a lot about healing, especially nervous system healing, trauma healing. Of you start with these big layers, and then you feel better, and then you start to keep going. But sometimes the stuff that you've already addressed comes back to us. But maybe we're ready, or it's time to work on it in a different way or on a different level, or it's presenting a little bit differently, although it can be a similar type of pattern, but it just shows up in our lives, maybe differently, and maybe we're ready to go to touch it on a deeper level at that time. So yeah, I think hypnotherapy, I do think it is great. Once again, I just don't think I was quite ready, and once again, it was like this person didn't do it this way. And it was really just her image, her walking me through it. And I hadn't even started meditating yet. And so, dropping into this trance state, I fought it very, very very hard. So with hypnotherapy, it sounds like, and I forgot to ask this, but EFT, pretty good for just about anyone, pretty accessible to just about anyone. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It can be helpful to have somebody walk you through it if you want to get to those deeper layers, just to know and understand how to do that for yourself. But that one is great to be using all the time for anything happening in your life. I really like it before bed to kind of just process my day and kind of clean everything out so I can go to bed and sleep really well.
Yeah, super good, especially if you have sleep issues, trauma around sleep. I bet that would be extremely beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with hypnotherapy, who do you see kind of benefiting from this modality? Is there, any pre-qualifications or anything, certain types of people, certain types of issues that do really well with this?
There are people who do not or who are not able to be hypnotized. And it's supposedly around 30% of the population. So it's not a huge amount, but it's a decent amount. But if you are somebody who has some experience with meditating and you are pretty good at like dropping into those deeper levels of yourself, hypnotherapy can be really, really useful. And you can work on so many things. I mean, people work with addictions with hypnotherapy all the time. I really like it to work on like future goals and getting your body shifted out of that mode of fear and chronic illness into like, what does life look like after this once I make it through all of this? Just because your subconscious really doesn't understand that time is different. Like, it's still stuck in past trauma, not understanding that you're 10 years older. Life is so different. So hypnotherapy can kind of help make that change, help your body and subconscious know that you're safe. You have more resources now that it's safe to move forward.
Yeah, I'm curious. So two things came up for me as you were talking about that. The first one is inner child healing. Do you find like when working around inner child stuff, and maybe a lot of feelings around not feeling safe, not feeling protected, being in this chronic state of fight or flight from childhood, that hypnotherapy could be a really good option for that?
It could be. I actually prefer parts work for that, just because there can be more interaction between you and that child part of you that still feels unsafe. But you could work through it with hypnotherapy too.
Okay. The other thing that came up for me was manifestation. When we were
Yes,
working on manifesting something new, especially maybe something really big that, maybe there's a lot of subconscious programming around this. We never thought it was possible, like healing from chronic illness, like being able to go and have a quote unquote more normal life again, or whatever it might be, a new business goal, a new financial goal, that having this as a tool could be really beneficial in assisting in that process.
absolutely. And just one thing on that, a lot of people, whenever they start working toward these goals and they're visualizing it, they'll see it like a movie playing out in front of them. That is still you separate from that thing that you want. So if you can actually like get into your shoes in that moment that you have the thing, that's going to help your body feel safe actually having it, and you won't be separate from it anymore.
Great point. And I was just talking to someone about this yesterday. One of the big things with manifestation that was a game changer for me was not only being in that role and imagining myself playing out that role, but also feeling everything that came along with that. And what does my vibration feel like? What energy do I feel like? What emotions am I feeling? And being able to really embrace all of that has been a really powerful tool for me. And it sounds like that in the hypnotherapy, like that also could be really valuable tool, really
Definitely.
valuable too.
And
Yeah.
it also can highlight ways that you're still not comfortable and you're not safe having that thing. So once you start embodying that in your visualization, in your hypnotherapy practice, you'll start noticing like my body feels constricted around this part of it. So then it just directs you like, where do I need to work next to actually get what I want?
So valuable, because that's, I think, where a lot of people get held up. It's, I want to manifest this thing, but what is it that's holding me back? And I think it sounds like hypnotherapy could be like such a valuable tool in not only the visualization and being a part of this, and also understanding more of what is holding you back. Like, what programs are you still running just by default that may be holding you back from reaching these new goals or manifesting this specific thing or life or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you brought up parts work. I so I've never done parts work, and I have heard such amazing, amazing things about parts work from a lot of my friends who are deep in the healing space, from several clients. So what is parts work? How does it work? What does it look like? All the things.
Parts work to me is so fun. It feels more playful than a lot of these other ones, even when you are dealing with really difficult things. So it basically assumes that all of us we contain a multiplicity of personalities, which, I mean, that sounds scary. It sounds like multiple personality disorder, but it's not. We just all have this kind of a thing mildly that exists within our subconscious mind, because whenever you're a child and maybe you're reprimanded for being a certain way, or like being too loud, or for me it was always too sensitive. And so whenever that's not accepted in your family or your community, you kind of split off that part of yourself, because that's not safe. That makes you not lovable, and you need to be loved so that you're cared for and you can survive. So that starts creating all these parts that still live within you, and they're controlling the actions and things that you're doing every single day without even realizing it. So you can just think about whatever issue is happening in your life right now that you want to change. Feel into your body, like, where does it live in the body? There's usually some kind of a sensation, and just tune into that. And it's really helpful to close your eyes to go into this. But basically, you try to define it. Like, is there a color? Is there a shape? Is there anything? And then next you ask, like, well, how old is this thing? Sometimes you'll be really young. I have actually had some that were like past lifetimes or ancestral things. And if you're open to it, that could come to your awareness as well. But then you just start like working with this part, however old it is. You can tell it like, well, right now I am this age and all of this has changed since, 10 years old or whatever it was. And you just communicate with this part in a really loving and accepting way and give them what they didn't get at the time that they really needed. So it's just like healing that part of you and reintegrating it back into wholeness.
Yeah, so valuable. And I think, I've done similar work, just not exactly parts work, but I've done very similar types of things where we go back to different ages and how we feel and forgive and give that piece of us what we didn't have and what we needed, and then this reintegration process. And I've done this through more like energy type work. But I really so fascinated by parts work, and once again, I've seen like heard such raving reviews from so many people in my life about this. And so, when you're doing parts work, is this good for like everyone? Are there people who often do better with parts work than other people?
Parts work can be used by everybody. I will say it can be a little bit more difficult or more delicate if you do know that you have a lot of trauma. And it's best to be doing that in a container with a trained counselor or therapist or somebody that knows how to deal with that, because it can open up a lot of stuff that you haven't been consciously aware of. So I wouldn't say that's a danger. It's just something to prepare yourself for and make sure you are in a safe space and you can handle that.
Yes. Containers are super important. And if you guys listen to any of our previous podcasts about psychedelic work, we talk about environment and setting and, having support before and after and the integration process. And it sounds like parts work, you're not using anything like psychedelics. And it can bring up some things that maybe we weren't familiar with, or maybe we didn't actively remember, or we weren't super conscious of, which, at times, especially if you're newer to this work, can feel very, very big, very overwhelming, and not know what to do with. And if you don't have the proper support, can sometimes set you back if you don't know how to work with this. And so that's why it is really important, just as Brendon said, to have, especially if you do have quite a bit of trauma, to have a safe space, to have people in your corner that you can support you through this. So would you say this is more of a visualization exercise, more of kind of like a meditative, like what does this kind of look like?
I do find that people kind of drop into a trance state naturally when doing this work, because that does help you just get more connected with the subconscious, sometimes with spirit as well. But my brain totally went a different direction and I forgot the question.
Oh, you're good. Who is this good for?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh boy. Okay. So it can be used by anybody. It does bring you into a trance state. Oh, you don't have to be able to visualize in order to use it. You can go based on feeling, knowing, smelling, like whatever sense that you have that comes to you, you can work with that. A lot of times people will talk about visualization for like this and hypnosis and stuff, but it's not required.
Okay.
You can do a lot just with sensations in the body.
Okay. Would you even say that maybe this can be helpful if people are trying to reconnect with their body?
It could be, yeah. There are things, and there are many kinds of parts work, many different like schools of thought about it, but one of the ones people are probably hearing a lot about right now is internal family systems, or IFS. So in their terminology, you have protector parts. So some people have a lot of these. They have protectors for their protectors. So that can take a little getting used to work through. And so you can start just working, like if you have a lot of tension in your shoulders and traps all the time, just start with that, because that's probably a protector. And you can just start to get to know it and not have to really do anything. Just be like, I'm curious about this thing. and just start digging in. Like, what does it want to share with you? Is there a color, a shape, a size, a texture, anything that comes to you, and just learn more about it. And sometimes just having that awareness can shift things.
Yeah, absolutely. And is parts work something that should be done kind of regularly? Is like a one-off session okay? Like from a frequency standpoint, what does that kind of look like for a lot of people?
For a lot of people, it can be useful to do it more than once, just to deal with some of the main issues, the main things, ways that you sabotage yourself on a regular basis. It would be great to work with those over a few months time period, just so you can work with different aspects of it. And some of these parts don't integrate right away. So you want to be able to kind of build a relationship with them, which I know can sound kind of funny, but really just like tuning into those younger parts of yourself on a regular basis can give them, again, what they didn't get in the moment of childhood, because they're getting that attention and that care. And sometimes that requires time and attending to it.
Right. Yeah, I know for me, I spent a lot of time with inner child work, and, I felt, just for me as a child, I felt super lonely and very rejected, neglected, unloved. And that took years, a lot of years. And I would even say like my first psychedelic journey played a really big role in that. And I'd say like maybe like finally healed a lot of that. Fully healed, I don't want to say fully healed, but really kind of culminated with that. So yeah, for a lot of this stuff, it does take time. And once again, there are layers to a lot of this. And I think that's just important to understand, to be very patient, that all of this can be super beneficial and great and very healing. And healing takes time, and it's not an overnight process. And none of these things are quote unquote going to fix you, because you don't need fixing, one. And yeah, it just, when we deal with all of this trauma, whether it's big T trauma, little T trauma, it just takes time. We've been running these default programs for most of us, most of our lives. And yeah, it takes some time to just really, really shift some things, integrate, accept, love, heal, nurture, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is this does not happen overnight. Some people do get miraculous results from one session of any of these things, but most people, it does require consistency over time and just continuing to commit yourself to doing the work that's required to create the life and the health that you want.
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, so we've covered Psych-K, we've got EFT, we've got hypnosis, we've got parts work. What else do you do, Brendon? What else you got?
Several other things. So time techniques is another one. That time stands for time integration for maximum empowerment. And it is a kind of hypnosis, but with more of a specific format. And with this one, you can go back into old childhood memories and kind of do more inner child healing sort of work that way. You can deal, like if anxiety is the main emotion you feel all the time, you can, through this technique, like go back to where that anxiety started and, just care for yourself there and understand like what happened that created this feeling. And then it ripples out through your timeline all the way up to now and all the way forward, so that things do change from here on out. So it's another one that's really fun to work with. Visualization is an important piece of this. Again, not required. It just makes it a lot easier, because you are visualizing like a literal life timeline and like inserting things or dropping yourself into the timeline. So there are other ways of doing that. Just visualization is super helpful.
Yeah, so maybe if you do have some experience with visualization, meditation, it might be a little bit easier to do this one.
Yeah. And this is another one that's great for manifestation too, because then you can take a goal or something that you want and place it in your future timeline, and then things that need to happen in order for that to occur start changing all the way to the present.
Yeah. That's amazing. So cool. Okay, so we got time techniques. What else?
I was trained in heart math, which is a heart coherence kind of technique, and there are a lot of different, these are really like short, easy sort of practices to do, but it's all about getting your body to feel safe. And once you get in this heart coherent state, a lot of things start opening up for you, and it calms your nervous system down. Takes that fight or flight stuff away. It can improve your heart rate variability very, very quickly by practicing this. And I mean, the simplest technique is just to focus on the center of your chest, your heart space, and just imagine that you're breathing in and out through your heart. So you focus on that, breathe in and out, try to slow down your breathing so the inhales and exhales are about 5 seconds each. And that right there, once you settle in, will bring you into a coherent state. And coherent just means that like your heart and your brain are kind of on the same wavelength, and they're operating in kind of an organized rhythmic pattern. And that lets you know, or that lets your body know that things are okay, that you're safe. Because whenever you're running from a tiger or whatever the danger is, everything changes. All those patterns are very chaotic because you need to deal with that. But you also need to come back into the safe, regulated place. So it's a really great practice to learn what it feels like in your body to be safe.
This is so important. So I actually have this, I have a similar practice. I call it heart breathing, which, it's very similar and I like, for me, I just having dissociated from my body for so long, I do find it sometimes helpful to actually put my hands on my heart. And then I also like to visualize breathing in light and love, and then exhaling anything that is no longer serving me in this moment. And, I think this is such a simple technique that people can use when they are really stuck in these fight, flight, freeze type response. And it doesn't take very long, usually like a minute or two of even just breathing into this heart space can be really valuable in helping just bring you back, bring awareness, bring you into a little bit more into the present to help you feel safer. So I'm sure there's more to it that you do, but for me, I think that is just such a simple and accessible way to start reconnecting with your body and to help bring some safety back to your body. And we know, if you follow any of our content on social media, we talk about how you do have to feel safe, and we have to start regulating the nervous system to start healing so many of our physical issues, because so many things start to go wrong when our bodies don't feel safe. So this is heart mapping is what you call it, right?
Heart Math is the company that they do so much research on heart coherence, and they have studied it in relation to PTSD and even on refugees and like actual war-torn areas. So it works in so many situations. It's really, really powerful, and they have a lot of research behind it.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've got heart math. What else do you have in your toolbox?
NLP is another thing, and EFT, hypnotherapy, and time techniques are all part of like the larger container that is NLP, and that's neuro-linguistic programming. And it's just like a collection of tools that you can use to work with the subconscious mind. So there are many different modalities in that. Some of my favorites are working with metaphor in relation to your body. So just like on parts work, when I was mentioning tuning into your body and trying to define, like, what does that tension in my shoulders feel like? Is it red? Does it feel like a rope that's just really taut? Sometimes it'll be, you'll see like a smaller version of you, but if you get more of a metaphor kind of a thing, like a rope, it can be helpful just to work with that, because the subconscious gives us messages in metaphor all the time, and that's a lot of what our dreams are, honestly. So it's really fun to work with the metaphors, because then you don't have to deal directly with the difficult thing, whatever it is, and you're still processing a lot. So if you have, like, this is an actual one that I did last year. it was really powerful for me, so I still remember it. But I did have like a rope going through my center that was really, really tight and tense. And I was feeling that in my belly all the time, just like constriction. And so I just imagined, so in my head, the tight rope was connecting a dock to a boat. And it was just really, really tight, but just one rope holding this giant boat. So of course it's going to be strained. So in my head, I just added like 30 more ropes, and I felt instant relief just by visualizing that happening in my head. So I think we don't, I don't know, we don't take it seriously that simple stuff like this can make a huge, huge difference if you're willing to go there.
I was just going to say, how simple is that to make such a big difference? And I do think sometimes we overcomplicate this healing journey and things that we're feeling and things that we're trying to work through. And yes, sometimes they are very complicated, and there's a lot to process in all the things. And sometimes it doesn't have to be so complicated. And this simple metaphor, so thank you for sharing, of let's just add some more ropes. So this one rope isn't doing all of the work and doesn't feel so tight and, by itself and doing all of this work, and just give it some relief. And yeah, I think that's really incredible and such a valuable message for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, we have been talking about a lot of techniques that can be complicated and all of that, but that's not required. You can do so much just on your own. I just find these really, really helpful, and I think they're fun. Healing sometimes can be such a drag. You're cutting so many things out and you're doing so much. To me, these things feel a little bit magical, which helps me to stay more positive and know that things can change for me.
Yeah, what a great message. And when I do energy work and people have been working on really big stuff and, doing all of this, like big supplement protocols and like really big trauma work, a lot of times what will start to come up is play and fun, and how that is also so important and so valuable in our healing journeys. And yeah, sometimes, using a lot of these techniques and other techniques that are out there can be really heavy, can be a lot. And they can also be super fun, and just we can enjoy this. And healing doesn't always have to be so heavy, and we can have fun with it. It can be light. We can use these for manifestation and have fun with that, and have some more magic in our lives, which who doesn't want more magic in our lives? Let's be real here. So yeah, I think thank you for sharing that, because I do think that's a very important message that people also understand.
Yeah, I feel like everything is a duality. So it's important to go super deep and feel the hard stuff, and also to keep it light and fun when you can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, for me, I just like, I'm running through all of my big psychedelic journeys right now. I'm like, yeah, some of them just so hard, so challenging. And some of them were, I don't know, the quote unquote dream journey of just like feeling so light and free and full of love. And yeah, just that amazingness that we all hope for. And, cherishing those moments and those times and those experiences, because that is also healing. That is also very healing for us, as much in depending on who you are, maybe more at times than, doing the really big, heavy stuff. And once again, both are super important and super valuable. And I don't think you can really do one without the other. And it's just about timing of what you are processing and how you're processing and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other modalities that we haven't talked about?
That's all I can think of right now.
That's a lot. So yeah, Brendon is trained in so much, in addition to, being a nutritional therapy practitioner, blood chemistry specialist, life and success coach. Did I miss any other ones?
Yoga teacher.
Yoga, that's right.
Yeah.
That's the first one. Yoga teacher, energy practitioner.
If you can't tell, I'm a complete nerd. I love to learn, so.
That is also one of the reasons why we brought brought Brendon onto the team because she's trained in so many cool and different things and has so much experience with all of this. Just such a value into the practice to help people be able to heal on such different levels and, just bring more things into the practice here. So anything else you'd like to share before we kind of wrap up?
I think we covered a lot of really good stuff. So hopefully that's enough to get people curious and looking into more ways they can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested in learning more about working with Brendon with us, you can shoot us an email. You can book a consult with us. We can kind of put you in that right direction, whether it's just kind of some one-off sessions with her, whether it's actually doing, one of our programs where you also get to work with her, and everything like that. So never hesitate to reach out to us, info@trifectacollective.net. You can also DM or comment on anything on any of our socials across the board. So, and thank you, Brendon, for coming on, sharing all of the things helping us to learn, including myself, so much more about all of these really cool and deep and healing modalities that you're trained in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, as always, be sure to like, follow, subscribe. If it resonates, any 5-star reviews go a really long way for us, so we would really appreciate any 5-star reviews. And thank you so much for joining us, and be sure to join us next week on our next episode. Thanks.